Good morning, everybody, and Shabbat Shalom. Hello to the 12 tribes of Israel scattered abroad and believers in Yeshua Messiah. Good morning to everybody. Shabbat Shalom. It is the Sabbath morning. This is Hidden Manna. I'm Pastor Dave Sain, Senior Shepherd at Living Manna Church. Thank you so much for hanging out with me this morning. Beautiful, beautiful day here in the Northeast. Nice summer day. We got a neat conversation for you today. And to do that, of course, here is my dear brother, Max. There you are, man. What's going on, brother?
Hey, what's up, everyone? Shabbat Shalom. Good morning, bro. How you doing
Shabbat
today?
Shalom. Good. I am doing good. Really, really good. Crazy stuff, though, man, going on all over the place, all over the world, man.
Oh, yes.
We
It
are
is
in
crazy,
some,
man.
we are in some turmoil. You know, I just saw this thing on the fire that's going on in Russia.
Oh, in Russia. Okay.
Yeah, basically Siberia is burning down. They say it is the
Oh, yeah,
biggest.
yeah. I did see a little bit of that. Yeah.
Yeah, this is supposed to be the biggest fire in the world. I mean,
Yeah.
they say
in the coldest region. That was the title, right?
Yep, in the coldest region that they're having. It's summertime. Everything's all dry and warmer than it normally is, and they're saying this fire. Well, you can see it from space. It's bringing smoke everywhere. It's going to affect the whole planet. They say more carbon dioxide has been dumped out by this fire than the entire country of England, what they produce in a year.
In a year,
So,
wow.
Yeah, in a year. So it's
That puts it in
big.
perspective. Wow.
And I saw a little thing on. I mean, it's impossible to fight. Just to get to the fire, you got to drive into the middle of Siberia. There's no roads. Yeah. It's not like fires in California, where we have the great firemen and women, the jumpers, and
Oh yeah. Those jumpers are wild, man. I tell you, some brave men and women.
Oh, brave people. There was a movie. I don't even remember the name of it, but it told the story of a group.
The fire jumper?
Yeah, was that? Well, I don't know what the name of it was.
I don't know if it's the name. I think that sounds familiar though. Put in the comments. I don't know.
But they all passed away, being
really?
engulfed by the fire, and it was just a sad story. One guy survived, but man, those are some brave people. So they're trying to do this in Russia, but they're saying this is bigger than every fire. California, Colorado, all other places, Canada put together.
Yeah, but say Canada had a big one too, right?
They say that's not even as big as this one. This is truly, they say, a humongous fire. So, and it's they say it's gonna affect everything. I mean, that the smoke being poured out of there is gonna affect everything.
Well, yeah, when we a couple of weeks ago, we had about a week-long episode where we were getting this in Western New York, so we're close to the Canadian border.
You froze up for a second.
You couldn't even see the mountain ranges.
You froze up for a second. Go ahead and say that again.
During the Canadian fires, the smoke was coming all the way down into Western New York State. And you could usually see the mountain range, in the distance, and it was all the haze and smoke. That's all you saw.
Right.
So I can't imagine a fire of that size,
Meanwhile, the rest of the world is in a drought. California's in a drought. Arizona's in a drought. Texas is in a drought. The whole Midwest is in a drought. The whole world, the whole Middle East is in a drought. Man, if you don't realize that Yah's judgment is falling on us, just with all the craziness that's going on. And yet, most people, it's just life. It's the way it is.
Yeah. And of course, there's something else that occupies all the news time. I don't want you to hear,
Yeah, I'm aside from a pandemic that's, all over the world. I saw just, I think it was yesterday. There was a doctor that you sent me. I was watching him. Really, really good guy. Maybe I should see if I can. I don't know if I watched it on my phone or not, but I'll see if I can get the YouTube address, and I'll post it or put it out. But he was talking about this new strand that's coming out, and he was saying that it's changing, it's morphing, its variation is due to the upgrades that were done to it.
He said that he has no doubt that it was engineered.
An engineered virus. And so it's kind of scary. They say this thing it's changing according to the way it was made, which is crazy. I don't want to pretend that I know all the terminology he was using, but he said basically the stuff, it was downloaded to literally to do this.
Keep on
to keep changing, and it's crazy. You're just never going to get ahead of this thing. And oh man, just a crazy world we're living in, brother.
Yep, it
Never,
really is, man.
never thought I'd see these things in my day.
Yeah.
Good morning, everybody. Those people that are joining us, good morning to you guys. Shabbat Shalom. Thanks so much for hanging out with us today. We've got a neat conversation. I hope it's a neat conversation. Hope you guys enjoy it. I want to talk a little bit about evangelism today, a little bit about discipleship. And I know we've kind of skirted this some of this stuff before. We've touched on little pieces, and we certainly want to invite everybody out there. If you guys got a comment or something, let us know. We'll try to get it up there, a question. But there is, and I've said this many times before. Say it again. I'll probably say it a gazillion times. There is a big difference between evangelism, between making converts and making disciples. And there is no doubt in my mind anyway that we have we have been so influenced over the years and years of being
downloaded to use
we've had it downloaded into us,
engineered into our DNA.
Engineered, right? Boy, that's not funny. But yeah, so we've had this downloaded into us that we're the idea is to get people to say that prayer. If they say that prayer, then that's it. We're done. Then we move on to the next person and get them to say that prayer, and then we move on to the next person. And of course, the whole idea is very, very much, and this is very, very true of just almost every denomination out there. We keep a count. How many people came to an altar? How many people got saved? How many people said the prayer? And we count that or we call that evangelism. And yet it is very, very different than what Yeshua calls us to in Matthew 28. Go therefore into the nations, baptize them in my name, and go into the nations, make disciples, baptizing them in my name. So the call is to make disciples, right? And
that's right.
Not necessarily converts, because there's a big difference between a disciple and a convert. And so how do you do that? What's that process? What does it feel like? Because there's instruction that we get out of the gospel stories when Yeshua sends the 12 out. That's very, very different from the reality we live in today. Forget it was written to those people at that time as to what was going on, and he sends them out. Today we say, okay, well, we're 2,000 years behind. We're still supposed to be making disciples. We're still supposed to be getting this gospel out. But it's a very, very different situation today than it was when Yeshua sent the 12 or the 70 out to Israel, out to what was the Israel of its day, out to Judah. And so I know all of us at some point we've got family, we've got friends that you're talking to. Hopefully you do. How does that process go? What's it supposed to look like? What are the things that should be going on? What are the things that we've got to kind of be careful of, not to maybe get involved with? So I want that to kind of.
When's it time to just move on? When's it right?
Yeah, that's a tough one, right?
Yeah.
When is it? Because when is it time to move on? When is it time to stop sharing and say, this is just not going to happen? That's a tough thing to do, especially when it's your own family.
Yeah,
your own family, your
I
own
agree.
friends. That's a very, very difficult thing to do, because on one hand, we have to maintain relationships because we're family. You're going to go to family dinners. You're going to go to family, stuff. And yet there's also a line that you draw that I can't be involved in this or that. And so, where are those lines? And so that's going to kind of be the conversation for today. And I think we've all had experiences where, people that we're talking to just don't want to hear it.
Yeah.
Don't want to hear it, or just, tuned out, turned off. And, what do we do? And then when you get somebody that does want to hear it, what do you do? What's the process? How do we disciple them? And I guess really primarily you've got to say, if you're not a disciple yourself, if you haven't learned, how can you teach someone else? Right? So there's definitely a process here, and I think that's one of the issues that I think we've all experienced before. Because remember, back in that world, in that religious world, as soon as you, quote unquote, I'm just using the term, accepted him as Lord and Savior, and we went over this on Wednesday, the validity of that or not. But once you did that, we were then told, now you got to go out and tell people, go out and share, go out and we did, and a lot of us did. And I don't know about you, but I remember doing that as a person that knew absolutely nothing. And I know now, looking back on it, I did so much more harm.
Oh yeah.
I did so much. It was terrible.
Yeah, I remember even being a youth, and in our old church that we grew up in, once people, quote unquote, like you said, that got saved, and 2 weeks later they were part of the, going to Pathmark, handing out tracts, trying to witness to people.
Yeah, I remember that. I remember
it's
that.
like,
Shirley,
really?
Shirley, Long Island. We were out there and
throw them right into ministry. They don't know
anything. Yeah,
throw them
right into ministry.
Yeah.
And those are now, after years of learning and wisdom, we were set up for failure. We were set up. And think of how many people we offended, and pushed away, and we were so sure about you need to accept them, but I didn't know anything. I knew nothing else.
Exactly.
I had no knowledge, no understanding.
Nope.
And so even Yeshua, when he's sending out the disciples, the apostles, I mean, these are guys who grew up in Judaism. They grew up with the Torah.
The Torah,
right? And of course, Yeshua is steering them away from the Pharisaic way of doing things, teaching them the truth. But he doesn't send them out the week after.
I know.
They understand who he is.
And before we even go elaborate, I mean, I even think that people forget that who they're trying to speak to, the people that are new to, their walk, when they get a hard question, it makes them question their faith. So they're not even strong enough to where if they came across an atheist, let's say, or whatever, and they threw them their point, they're going to be like, oh, wow, because they're not rooted. They don't know the word.
Yeah,
so not only does it make, right?
There has to be a time of learning. There has to be a time of understanding. We've got to be willing to say, I don't know, if I don't know. And what I have learned over the years is the more you learn, the more you realize, you don't know.
Yep.
And you can see all the mistakes that you did make. And I think there's also sort of this false idea amongst the sheep, the people of modern religion today, that shepherd knows everything. The guy that's my pastor, he's got all the answers, and he doesn't. It's
got a lot of books in his office.
Got a lot of books. got a couple of degrees. Hanging up on the wall, and and we put people like that on a pedestal that they've got to have all the answers, and then when they don't, or they mess up, then that just destroys everybody, the witness and everything. And so and even what I've experienced is, I realize now things I didn't know. I had no concept of 4, 5, 8, 10 years ago. No reference to come to this conclusion. And you've got to be adjustable or malleable with that. That the more you learn, the more you truly study, the more you're going to learn, and the more you're going to realize some of the things I thought weren't right. It wasn't true. I didn't have enough information yet to really come to a correct conclusion on it. And you've got to be willing to, as we listen, as we learn, be willing to get the best answer you can on whatever the subject is. But realize 5 years from now you may realize something else that you weren't aware of, and you've got to make room for that and not be so rigid that this is what I heard. And listen, there are obviously some things that are just rock solid. Yeshua is Yehovah, right?
That's right.
Yeshua died as a sacrifice. Those are, rock solid issues that are very, very plain and surface. But there's a lot of other things, especially when you get into areas like prophecy and, trying to understand the concept of end times and all that, all that kind of stuff, or even just what we're talking about today, discipleship. That it takes time. I think I'm trying to remember. I don't remember where it is, but I know that there's an example of it in the gospel account when Yeshua goes to the fig tree, and actually tells a parable about the fig tree, and he says to there was a fig tree. It had been there for 3 years, hadn't borne any fruit, and he was gonna just tear the whole thing down, and the guy, the gardener, whatever he is, pleads with the master, let's dig a trench around it, let's water it, let's fertilize it, let's give it one more season to begin to grow fruit before he tears it down. And that's actually a reference to in the Torah where it talks about having circumcision of trees or circumcision of fruit, that even when a tree is planted in as far as going into the land was concerned.
Yeah, you can't eat the fruit till
Right, you can't eat the fruit. The fruits, and I guess I'm not a plant guy. I'm not a tree guy, but I'm assuming that when a tree first starts bearing its fruit, that it's not the sweetest, it's not the ripest, it's not the best. The tree's just sort of starting off, and it needs time to mature before that fruit can then be eaten and brought. And it's called the circumcision of the tree. And I think
I've actually eaten a pear one time on a newbie, and it's just nasty. It's just really bitter and sour.
I never knew that. I just figured, trees grow and they grow fruit and you eat the fruit. But yet Yah's teaching us this principle that there does need to be time for fruit to mature, for your understanding of things to mature before you can put that fruit out there for other people to start to partake of. And so let's talk about it. Here is
I think that's an awesome opening to. I think maybe we can open with a scripture in Matthew.
All right.
With the
Matthew, fruit. Okay, give me a
chapter 7.
Chapter. All right, let me do this. I'm in chapter 10.
I want you to read it, if you don't mind, from the scriptures. Then I'm going to read it after you read it from the Shem Tov's Hebrew Matthew.
All right, Matthew chapter 7. What verse?
13.
Okay.
And then it's going to be to around 21.
All right, so here's 13. It says, enter. Let me highlight it for everybody so you guys can see it. There we go. It says, enter in through the narrow gate, because the gate is wide and the way is broad that leads to destruction, and there are many who enter through it. Because the gate is narrow and the way is hard pressed, which leads to life, and there are few who find it. I mean, just those two verses by themselves are a huge eye opener. But verse 15, it says, but beware of false prophets, who come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly they are savage wolves. By their fruits you shall know them. Are grapes gathered from thorn bushes, or figs from thistles? So every good tree yields good fruit, but a rotten tree yields wicked fruit. A good tree is unable to yield wicked fruit, and a rotten tree to yield good fruit. Every tree that does not bear good fruit is cut down and thrown into the fire. Wow, that's another major statement. 20 and 21. So then, by their fruits you shall know them. And then, of course, not everyone who says to me, Master, Master, shall enter into the kingdom of heaven, but he who is doing the desire of my Father in heaven. Okay. Those are those are some powerful scriptures.
Yeah. Now, I just want to read it now in this translation, and then maybe just do a little bit of digging while we do it.
Sure, go ahead.
Start at 13. At that time, Yeshua said to his Talmudim disciples, enter into the narrow gate, because the gate of destruction is wide and deep, and many are going through it. How narrow is the gate and grievous the way that leads straight to life, and few those who find it. Again, he said to them, beware of the false prophets who come to you in wolves' clothing like sheep, but inside are tearing wolves. This is key right here, 16. It says, by their deeds you will know them. Does a man gather grapes from thorns or figs from briars? Every good tree makes good fruit. Every bad tree makes bad fruit. The good tree cannot make bad fruit, nor can the bad tree make good fruit. Every tree which does not make good fruit is burned in the fire. Therefore, it is according to fruits, that is, by their deeds you will know them. Because not everyone who says to me, Master, will enter the kingdom of heaven, but the one who does the will of the Father who is in heaven will enter the kingdom of heaven. Now, that's a big word there. A couple weeks ago, we went over definitions, and a lot of people don't even know what fruit is, right? We hear it all the time, fruit, fruit, fruit. But right here, Yeshua tells us in 20 that therefore it is according to fruits, that is, their deeds. So how do we gain fruit, much fruit, right? By following Yah's commands, by growing in his word, and by producing, by doing his commands, it produces fruit. So what I looked up in the Strongs is if you read Genesis chapter 3 and he's going through the garden, the word fruit in the Hebrew is peri, peri or P-E-R-E-E. But the word fruit here in the Greek is karpos, K-A-R-P-O-S. So when I looked it up in the interlinear, the first definition is deeds, our works. So how do we know who, if we're confused and we're, fellowshipping with someone after a while and we're trying to disciple them and it's just not working according to our plan? It's these people are adamant, they don't want to hear it. But how do we know they're not his sheep, though? How do we know? He tells us if they're not willing to walk in his commands, if they're not following, Yah's word, and you're trying to push it, we know they're not his sheep because we'll know them by their fruit, right?
Well,
So I think it's really key because, yeah, bro.
No, go ahead.
No, I mean that's because that's the one question I think everyone has. How do we know? How do we know? Because we're blinded by family, right? We know they're our family, they're our flesh and blood. So we're not going to see those things. No. They love God. I see it. I feel it. It's been months and months. I'm trying to talk. They don't want nothing to do with it, but I'm trying. I'm trying to show them, and they don't have fruit. There's no fruit.
Well, I think the no doubt this is. We need to see fruit in people. Yeshua told us, any tree in me that does not bear fruit that branch is going to be cut off and thrown into the fire, which is really, he's kind of just reiterating what he said here. The context here is about teachers, but it applies not just to teachers, it applies to all of us, but certainly teachers as well, those who will teach you. And I think some of the definition of what we consider fruit today is not what Yeshua is talking about. Because if you when people kind of think of fruit or think about these verses, well, he's a nice guy, they're loving people, they're kind, they're generous. That's not fruit. Those are character things. And yes, is there the fruit of the Spirit? Absolutely, love, joy, peace, all of that.
Yeah.
But that's not what Yeshua is talking about here. He's talking about their actions, their obedience to God's instruction. That's the fruit that he's actually referring to. That if you don't see that in the person who's teaching, that they're a false teacher, and yet we make these emotional arguments, or I guess it's kind of been the way around us. Well, they're a nice person, or he's a nice guy, and he's got, some good things. We've got to be real careful because Yeshua tells us a bad tree just cannot bear good fruit. It's impossible. I think we lost you, brother. I'm looking at you there. He's frozen. We'll give him a second to come back, but I'll sort of carry the conversation until he comes. In Luke, in Luke chapter 9 and verse 57. It's up here. And let me do this. Luke chapter 9, verse 57. Yeshua talks about discipleship. And let me jump to it. Verse 57. And it's quite a few verses, but I'll just come here. 57 through 62. And I think we lost Brother Max. You guys can hear that? Hey, Brother Max, you still there, man?
I'm here, man. We're live.
We lost you, bro.
Yeah, I know. I just I was talking to you, all of a sudden I just saw my screen cover on my computer.
You weren't bearing fruit. You were cut off.
I was
No,
cut
I'm only
off,
kidding. I'm in Luke chapter 9. I was going to talk a little bit about some of the words that Yeshua said about discipleship. Because I was just saying that, you know, those verses that we were just bringing up, knowing what fruit really is. He's talking about deeds. He's talking about that which you do that is the instruction from the Torah. He's not just talking about being a nice guy. He's not talking about, you know, being a loving person, being moral or ethical, because anybody can be those things.
Yeah, I've even heard fruit is, oh, he goes to church every week.
Right.
He's,
Right. So you got to know what the actual definition is, no doubt. And he's talking about teachers, but certainly it goes, you know, from us too. We need, how do you know somebody is really walking in the Lord? You see fruit. You see their obedience to the commandments. You see, you know, you see them doing things or not doing things that you recognize and you realize, oh my goodness, yes, that is a brother or a sister. But here's Yeshua's, welcome back. I think Mosey just said, welcome back, Max. Here's Luke chapter 9. Now, here's Yeshua talking about discipleship specifically, and from verses 57 to 62. Listen to what Yeshua says here. It says, and it came to be, as they journeyed on the way, that someone said to him, Master, I shall follow you wherever you go. And Yeshua said to him, the foxes have holes and the birds of the heaven have nests, but the Son of Adam, the Son of Man, nowhere to lay his head. I want to stop right there for a second because he's talking about discipleship. He's talking about somebody making that statement that we want to follow you. And then it seems like Yeshua says something that is so disconnected to it. You know, birds of the air have somewhere to go. The foxes have holes. The birds are, but the Son of Man doesn't. And what does that mean? What is he actually trying to get across to us? And I think it's this. Here is God as flesh, as man, discipling us. He is teaching us. He's showing us how to live Torah correctly. Someone says that they want to follow him, and he introduces some words that identify that Yeshua is not at home here. This is not his place. Like foxes have holes, birds have nests. This is not where we belong. This is not where people who follow me belong.
Yeah,
and
there's like a disconnect. We feel disconnected. Yeah.
Yeah, and there is, and I can attest to this, and I hope other people can, you know, relate to this. But the more you know, the more you truly try to follow him, very often the more disconnected you feel from other things around you, from what other people are doing, from what other conversations are. And I think that's part of the disciple process here, that the more we walk with him and in him, certainly the less we walk in, quote unquote, the world. But it certainly does sometimes feel like, you know, you're the odd person out when everybody's sitting at the restaurant and everybody's ordering, you know, and they're ordering paella and lobster and bacon cheeseburgers, and all of a sudden you realize you're the odd guy out, and you're like, you know, do you have any turkey bacon? And people look at you as like, though you're weird. There's something wrong with you.
They think you're on a diet. Oh, you just on a diet? No, you know.
Right, but if I said I didn't want, you know, wheat or what's that thing?
Gluten. Yeah.
Gluten. You know, that would be fine. So Yeshua's response is, you know, the birds of the air have somewhere to go. the foxes do. If you follow me, you're going to feel as though you don't belong. I know that's probably not, that would not be considered great evangelism, something great to teach people because who wants to feel that way. But this is what Yeshua says comes with discipleship.
Yeah, we're not of this world, right? We're aliens.
You will feel as though you do not belong at times. I mean, it's not all the time, ever, because be around people of Yah, but very often it feels that way. But then he goes on to say in verse 59, and he said to another, follow me. But he said, Master, let me first go and bury my father. And Yeshua said to them, let the dead bury their own dead, but you go and announce the kingdom of heaven. Another one of those sort of, it almost seems like a detached response. Here's a guy who wants to go, do what a family member should be doing. And Yeshua tells him, let the dead bury the dead.
Yeah.
What does that mean? How is this discipleship? And I think one of the best ways to maybe understand this, and we're talking about something legitimate here. Would it have been legitimate for this guy to want to, to be part of the burial process of his father, which, a burial process back then was very, very different than it is today. It could have, I don't know if they're talking about the guy just died and they got to put him in the ossuary, or he's got to wait the year to wait till his body decays and then and then take the bones that are in the tomb and put them in an ossuary. Whichever the case, because there's two different ways to kind of look at this. But whatever the case is, what his excuse is for not following him, for not being a disciple, is
the key right there. Yeah.
I guess today we would say, let me do me. Let me
move. Yeah.
Let me do me first. And it could be something very legitimate. Is it not legitimate to want to go and bury your loved ones? And I'm not saying in any way you can't go out and bury your loved ones, go to funerals and stuff like that. But he's trying to teach us a priority here, that if even if the good things, the things that we might think are worthy, if they are in opposition to what Yah has asked us to do, or they take you away from it, how many times does an issue come up on Sabbath?
That's right.
Right. And listen, are there times where your donkey's in the hole and you got to do something? No doubt. Yeah. But it's real easy, every week to find a donkey in the hole. It really is. Right. It's real easy. Go ahead.
And then also, I think what he's also saying, and it reiterates it with other scripture when he says, if you love, son or daughter more than me, you're not worthy of me.
Yeah, right? Well, I think that comes out of, I think it's Matthew 10, which is a whole, which is Yeshua sending out the 12. I think it's sending out the 12, and then he sends out the 70.
Is that when he goes, when I didn't come to bring peace, but a sword? And he goes through that.
Yeah, right? another again, not something that is normally, realized. He says, I didn't come to bring peace, but we've been taught that that's exactly what is happening. So as a disciple, sometimes you feel like you don't belong. You feel like you're the sore thumb, you're the odd man out, you're the third wheel. Or we've got to be careful even about good things when it comes to being obedient to his instruction. The story of the two servants, I think it's Matthew 25, there's two servants. One gives food in due season and the other doesn't. One is making disciples, and of course it calls it food, but it's really speaking about giving God's word, teaching God's word, living it in such a way. The other one, it says he drinks with the drunkards, he does all the stuff that everybody else is doing. And of course, that is the wicked servant that winds up being, cast into outer darkness. Discipleship, you got to be a disciple.
Yeah.
But as a disciple, what scripture can we kind of point to sort of be the guidance as to how we are supposed to go through this? Well, here's one. We don't belong here. Be careful not to let things that are and again, it's hard, especially in our world today when there's so much to do. You can go out and do. Listen, in this day, I mean, going to bury your father, that's a good thing. And yet here, the Son of God is standing right in front of you and asking you to follow. And you're like, well, I got this to do and I got that to do. How much more easy is that to do today when we start to come up with, well, I got to get this done and I really don't have time for this. And I had to, work was this way all week long. And do we really have to bother with, the way we eat or what we say? And it's real easy in the modern culture as a disciple to kind of fall away from that. But he doesn't end there, because the last words in that portion, and let me pop it back up. Give me just a second.
Sure.
I don't know where it went. Here it is. Is verse 62. There we go. 61 and verse 62. And another said to him, Master, I shall follow you, but let me first say goodbye to those in my house. Again, that's a benign thing, right? Let me go back home. And his words are, but Yeshua said to him, no one having put his hand to the plow and looking back is fit for the kingdom of heaven. So how is this guy saying, I want to go back and visit my family? And Yeshua's telling him, start here. Start here. You don't have to go back. Start here. And that idea of putting your hand to the plow is, once you start down this road of discipleship, you really start understanding there is no going back. At least for me, there is no going back. There is no looking over your shoulder. I can't go back to
the vomit,
to what I understood. I can't go back to what I thought I knew, and yet the process of learning continues. Okay, brother.
John chapter 8, right, tells us, was it John 8?
Let me get there.
31, 32, about discipleship. Let me see. You can pull it up.
John and chapter 8.
Yeah, verse 31, 32.
Give me a second to pull this up. Verse 31 and 32. Here it is. So Yeshua said to the Yehudim who believed in him, if you stay in my word, you are truly my disciples, and you shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. And of course, this is the whole we're Abraham's seed and all the rest of that. That's the verse you want to pop up?
Yeah, I wanted a different one, but that's one that just popped up in my head. But
it all comes back to obedience to his word
and remaining in his word too. It's not just about
It always comes back to remaining in his word. So the fruit, which goes back to the first, one of the first scriptures we opened up with, the fruit. What is fruit? Fruit is when you see people keeping Sabbath. Fruit is when you see people keeping Passover. Fruit is when you see people loving people the way that they want to be loved.
Right.
Those are products of Torah. And the thing is,
PD.
Yeah.
I just wanted to add real fast while I remembered. Of course, what we're speaking about today, it was also a comment that me and you received, a question. Part of this, what we're talking about today, was a question. And some people get invited to fellowship, with certain groups. But in that group of people, there's been people who do not believe that Yeshua is Jehovah in the flesh. They believe that he was just, his conception started with Mary at birth, and that was it, that God just chose that particular thing. So is it okay to fellowship with those people? And this is what I want to bring up at 2 John. So I did want to address this part of a little question that I did get about discipleship and, hanging out with these people.
2 John?
2 John chapter 1, verses 7 through 11.
Second John chapter 1, verses what?
7 through 11.
All right, here we go. Because many who are leading astray went out into the world who do not confess Yeshua Messiah as coming in the flesh. This one is he who is leading astray and anti-Messiah. See to yourselves that we do not lose what we worked for, but that we might receive a complete reward. That's it. 7 and 8.
No, keep on going down to 11.
Oh, 11. Everyone who is transgressing and not staying in the teaching of Messiah does not possess Elohim. The one who stays in the teaching of Messiah possesses both the Father and the Son. If anyone comes to you and does not bring this teaching, do not receive him into your house or greet him. For he who greets him shares in his wicked works. Wow, that's an eye-opener, isn't it?
Yeah. So that's what I wanted to get on. Do we fellowship with these people who don't even, because that's what anti-Messiah is. People who do not believe. It says it here that Yeshua came in the flesh. I know some people just want to say that was, the Gnostics because they didn't believe he came in the flesh. But no, that's the spirit of the anti-Messiah, saying that Yeshua is not Elohim. He's not Jehovah. No. So do we fellowship with these people? No, don't even associate with them. Don't even,
it's I get where where people would come from, especially if we're talking about family, friends, but yeah, you're absolutely right. Yeshua is drawing the line. He told us, "I did not come to bring peace."
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes the people that you will be at odds with will actually be people of your own household. In these verses that you're bringing up, he's even going beyond that and saying,
mm-hmm.
should we be fellowshipping, even for the sake of evangelism, should we be fellowshipping with trees that cannot produce good fruit?
Mm-hmm.
And the answer here is no. At some point, and this takes wisdom, this takes learning, this takes time.
Mm-hmm.
Our first response, can't just be to cut people off. Certainly, you want to pray for them, you want to give time, you want to try, but at some point, there does come a time where you've got to say, there will be no fruit that comes out of this.
Yep.
They do not want it, and you got to be careful, because what winds up happening is sooner or later we'll be influenced by them.
Yeah.
And you got to be real careful about that. Can I go to other? I mean, let's take it to its most extreme. Would I go to a mosque and sit there to try to evangelize people in a mosque? Probably not the best thing to do.
No.
It's I mean, not to say that people that go to mosque can't come to Yehovah. Of course they can. But
mm-hmm.
now you're putting yourself in a situation where that there's no fruit there. Those are not trees that want to hear anything of it. And what would
mm-hmm.
you do? You wouldn't just keep going and keep going and keep going. At some point, you've got to realize no. And that's exactly what Yeshua says to the disciples when he sends them out. He says, if you're received into someone's house, go, give them peace.
Mm-hmm.
If they don't want to hear it, he says,
dust your feet off.
Dust your feet off. Proclaim, take your peace back from that town, and go to
mm-hmm.
the next one. And
that's Matthew chapter 10, 12 through 15.
That's tough to do, though.
It is.
In real practical application, that's hard to do. It
mm-hmm.
really is. And yet, the way that we're taught is, just evangelism. Just let them say that prayer, and they're good. It's got to be about learning. It's got to be about step by step by step.
And I think
by step.
This angle on this particular instance was someone who says that they follow, they're in Hebraic roots, they're following Torah, but they still refuse. It's like they're going backwards. They're going into Judaism as opposed to, just following the truth. So I think
see a lot of
that's
that.
what it is, because
we
see it all over the internet, right?
Yeah, I see a lot of that. I see a lot of people that begin to understand that Yeshua is Messiah from a Hebraic perspective, but then we go backwards and we start doing things that are really part of a whole different religious experience. I think it was Brother Paul from Washington sent me this awesome picture, and I'll probably use it tomorrow for the message. We're going to talk about the Mark of the Beast. But he sent me this awesome picture, and it's got a guy standing there, and there's this road, and the turn off to the right it says Judaism, and then there's a turn off to the left, and it says Christianity, and then there's the road right down the middle, and it says the way. And I thought, man, what a great picture showing.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Great truth. It's not about Judaism, nor is it about Christianity as it has unfolded to us in the modern age or over the ages. It's about following the way. And as Yeshua said, that way is narrow. It's difficult. You've got to be careful of false prophets. You've got to be careful of wolves in sheep's clothing. And the only way to do that is to abide in his word, to disciple yourself, to know what you're talking about, to understand what you believe, find a good teacher to be under, and then you're fit to try to tell somebody else and answer other questions and share with
I think Peter tells us that, right? To be on account of what we believe, be ready to speak what,
Yeah,
and
be
I
able
think
to give an account.
if you said a prayer in the middle of the Walmart aisle and the toy aisle because some guy walked up to you and said, "Do you know Jesus?" And then you said a prayer, that's not how it works, man.
Did you ever see these the videos of guys that sort of go out on the street corner with a megaphone or a microphone, and they just start telling people, you need to accept the Lord into your life. That stuff never goes well.
No.
It never goes. And there's a lot of opposition, at least in the videos I've seen, a lot of opposition to people doing that. I'm not so sure. In fact, I'm not so sure. That's not making a disciple.
No.
For a lot of people, that's probably offending a lot of people. But and there's another group. Have you ever seen? I think they're called the Black Jews or the Black Hebrews.
Oh, the Israelite, the
Black Israelites. They do the same thing. They stand on the corner, except their thing is just ripping people apart, and it's a whole lot of racism.
We've had personal experiences in New York City with them, with our family on outings. Yeah,
that's not making disciples. That is not making the disciple. You know what? I think one of the best ways in the modern age in which we're living to make a disciple is that guy at work, that friend, be a friend. Show the love of God. You don't even have to tell them about Yah at first. Live it. When they see that
be set apart. Be set apart.
Eat differently. Yeah, be holy. When they see that you eat differently, that you talk differently, that you worship differently, there's something different about you. That's the open door. And that takes time to cultivate. This idea of quick, just, meet them on the street and say the prayer and it's done. That doesn't really cause a change in anybody.
No.
But time and effort and you and I putting in the time and the effort first to learn and then to be able to share what we know. So having that's
being a true light. When you're set apart, that's letting your light shine.
No doubt. And that's the only, to me, in the modern world in which we live in, that's the only way to really share with somebody. That's the only way, is when they see that it is real in you, and when it really happens to you, when you really get this, as Yeshua said, you realize this is not the world that He's given to you. You know what? I have a really different perspective on Solomon lately. Reading Solomon, I spent some time reading Proverbs and Ecclesiastes, and when you first read Solomon, it almost sounds, maybe not fatalistic, but he almost sounds like vanity. Everything's just vanity, and it almost sounds hopeless in one sense, because he's saying nothing matters. But at the end, he evidently does say what does matter. Is keeping the commandments, loving the Lord your God, the Shema, keeping the commandments. But when he talks about vanity, I'm starting to get a different perspective of what he was saying, because he says he was the most wise man in the world, right? He sought wisdom. He sought Yah's wisdom. All the Proverbs and all Ecclesiastes are practical ways to put God's Torah into action. That's really what they are. And yet after all of that, he calls the word nothing new under the sun. It's all vanity. It's not a waste, but it's empty. And I think what he was saying, because what I'm starting to realize is the more Solomon knew, the more he truly understood who Yah is, the more he realized how far away from the truth the whole world really is, everything around, how we are going in such an opposite direction.
I
And
think even in his own personal life too, right? How
yeah,
far
well,
he fell,
I felt horribly far.
Yeah.
But I'm starting to understand what he was saying, because the more you truly understand, the more you know, the more, as Yeshua said, you realize there's no place to put my head here. This truly is not the thing Yah had for us, which is a total opposite of the way most people think. This is it. This is the life. This is what we got. And really what it turns out to be is we've got a really short period, this lifetime, to understand, to get it, to let it soak in, to love him, to be obedient to him. And that's not a long time.
No. And what's amazing is you even see it in the world, right? You look at Hollywood. These people that have hundreds of millions of dollars are never satisfied. They can't just have one Ferrari. They got to buy 20, 30. They got to have a collection of 100, because they just keep on trying. We used to say that in church, fill that void, right? That peg. But really, it is. It's useless. There's nothing here. That's why we can't love the world. And right? We can't serve two masters, and because you're going to love one more than the other. And most people start to love the things the pleasures of this earth,
But that is so antithetical to what we've been taught, to what's in our culture, to the way we are told what a successful life is supposed to be. And guys, it's not bad to have things. I get it. We live in this world, but looking at the first century disciples, they gave up everything. Absolutely
everything, man.
Everything to walk in him and to be that example to others. And you know what? Is it really any different for us? Has the requirement changed?
Nope.
I don't think the requirements changed, but I think the temptation of the world around us is so much bigger now and pulls us in so many directions. And the only counter we have to it is to learn his word. Is to truly,
even Paul tells us to imitate
understand
him,
it.
Right? They gave up everything, right?
They did. I mean, Shaul goes through the list. I count everything loss. I mean, think about what he's saying. He's saying that there's nothing that I have in this life that can be compared to the knowledge and the acceptance that I've gained in Yeshua Messiah. Can we do that? Can we say that today? Is that part of the whole thing? I think as Americans, especially, we're so materialistic in everything. All of us are.
Wow. And
we
that
all
just
are.
loops right back to what you said before. Oh, can't I just go do this first before I follow you? Right?
Yeah.
He was speaking to us right here in this day and age too.
Now let's make sure that we understand this, though, that obeying the commandments is not the same as justification. It's not the same as being made right in Yah's eyes. We don't do that to get right. We do that because we are already righteous. We've already realized how far away we are, who he is. We understand what he's done. We've covenanted ourselves with him. So the keeping of the commandments is the expression of our love. So I don't want people to think that, okay, can you mess up on the commandments? Of course you can. But if you truly love him, is that what you want to do? Is that the norm? Do I want to go do me first and then put him later? And you might do that. You might do that once or twice, but at some point, as you learn, you realize I've got to do what he's asked me to do. I have to. I want to. I want to do. And this goes right into the Shema. We're going to talk about this tomorrow, because that is the most important verse, really, out of probably the entire Bible, to keep the Shema. Yeshua talks about it. Paul talks about it. Moses talks about it. It is throughout the scripture that if you love me, you will obey. But I just want to put it in its right perspective, because I don't want people to get the idea that we're saying, you got to do this and you got to do that. No, you want to do this in obedience. You want to do that in obedience. Right. But discipleship. Luke chapter 9, verses 23 through 27. People kind of get confused on this one. Let me pull it up, and then we'll talk about it. Luke and chapter 9. What did I say? Verse 23.
Mm-hmm.
Listen to the master's words. And I know people get this confused. It says, he said to them, let me highlight it. It's all the way to verse 27. And he said to them, if anyone wishes to come after me, be a disciple, let him deny himself. I mean, that's everything we've been talking about, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Let him deny himself. It doesn't mean you take a whip to your back and you start, flogging yourself or anything like that.
Yeah,
That's not what he's talking about.
That's what the monks do, right?
Yeah,
Monks.
yeah. Yeah, they did. They would flog themselves as, to deny themselves. It's not, that's not what it's talking about. But it is talking about denying yourself. It is talking about very often putting what your flesh wants to do to a
don't
back
feed
seat.
the flesh, yeah.
So deny himself and take up, now here's the way it says it in the scriptures version, take up his stake daily and follow me. But when you read that in King James, NIV, those verses, it says to take up your cross and follow me. And what we've sort of believed or what has been the norm with this has nothing to do with wearing a cross. This has nothing to do with putting a cross as a
around your neck,
around your neck, in your ear, jewelry, as something to look at. That's not what he's not even close to what he's saying. And if you listen to the next verse, for whoever wishes to save his life shall lose it, but whoever loses his life for my sake shall save it. Well, taking up your cross, that's not, it's part of our vernacular today, but what it meant in that day was willing to die. That you are willing to die, that you are willing to suffer the most humiliating death, and there is, for the sake of your walk with God. Man, that's powerful. That's powerful, and it's said in the next verse. If you're looking to save your life, if that's what you are about, you're going to lose it.
Yep.
But if you're willing to lose your life, if you're willing to realize, I don't have a place, honestly, in this world to put my head. This is not where I belong. I do want to learn. I do want to understand. Right. I do want to obey. A part of me wants to do me first, but I'm fighting that, and I'm trying to do him first. And I don't want this to sound bleak or lonely, because it's the most satisfying thing in the world when you truly fall in love with our Yah. But there are definitely words that the Master uses that are hard, that are not the typical thing that we hear anymore about being a disciple. These are the costs of being a disciple. This is not an easy thing. This is why Yeshua says it's few that find it, few that come to these conclusions, that get to this point and begin to realize. He then goes on, let me finish reading it. For whoever wishes to save his life shall lose it, but whoever loses his life for my sake shall save it. For what is a man profited if he gains all the world and himself destroyed or lost? And man, if that doesn't speak to America, our whole possession culture. For whoever is ashamed of me and my words, of course we're talking about the commandments, the instructions, of him the Son of Man shall be ashamed when he comes in his glory and in his Father's and with the angels, the set apart messengers. But truly I say to you, and then he talks about some that are standing here that shall not taste death. He's talking to the disciples that would see the transfiguration. But man, listen to his words. One thing I've learned over the years is we have to take Yeshua's word literally.
Yeah.
You've got to take his word literally. He meant what he said. He said what he meant. So sort of a different conversation. I don't want it to sound fatalistic to anybody, but there's more to this discipleship thing than meets the eye. And be careful. Be careful, about where you go with it, what's who you're speaking to. And I think somebody typed up there, don't take your pearls and put them out before swine. You got to learn when and where to draw that line. When and where
and
to
speaking
say,
of that, let me just finish up with 1 Corinthians 5. 1 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 11 says, "But as it is, I wrote to you not to associate with anyone who is called a brother, who is a sexual sinner, covetous, idolater, slanderer, a drunkard, an extortioner. Don't even eat with such a person."
Well, yeah, that's kind of tough, because that means that, for 99.99% of the churches, you can't even go to church.
Yeah, but if you noticed, it was Torah. It was lawlessness. Everything he read was right, and they're still calling themselves a brother. And
boy, if that's not, as much as, like Solomon said, as much as things change.
Yeah, nothing. It's always
they
nothing new.
The same. With that definition, where can you go, right?
Yeah,
that's why you want to be around good brethren. All right, I'll give you the last word, brother. What do you got?
Well, don't forget Torah portion this week, and I can give a shout out to Brother Will Spires. If you have a Shabbat, sometimes like us, we just like to chill on the family and do our comfy. What do we call it?
Shabbat
cozy.
Shabbat cozy or Shabbat comfy.
And sometimes you don't want to break out, the word. You just want to lay down. There's a brother on YouTube. His name is Will Spires, Spires. He reads through the Torah portion, and sometimes you might fall asleep. His voice is very, he could do a voiceover for like Disney cartoons. He has a really nice reading voice. But so there's no excuse. So in your car, if you want, you can just put him on. So I don't recommend reading while you're driving. So listen to him do, and he'll go through the Torah portions. But it's a good portion to read it with your family. Amen.
All right, brother. Thanks, man.
All right, buddy.
Have yourself
Grandpa.
Yeah. Have yourself a good day. Enjoy your Sabbath with your family, brother.
Thank you. You too, brother.
Later, man.
Bye-bye.
Okay, everybody. That's our conversation for today. I know we were kind of off in different directions, but the bottom line of it is, become a disciple first. Learn first, and once you have fruit, then you can go out and start to share and disciple someone else. And it's a lot slower process, much slower process than just going out and trying to get somebody to say a prayer. It's about investing in someone's life. It's about sharing with them. It's about living it in front of them. And if they don't want to hear it, then they don't want to hear it. Doesn't mean you can't pray for them, and doesn't mean that down the road something might change. But it might mean that you need to move on to the next person and start a new relationship somewhere else. So with that, guys, thank you for hanging out with us this morning. Tomorrow we got another exciting message for you. We're talking about the mark of the beast, and we'll get into it in depth as to what people think, really what it is, and continuing the messages that we've done about the beast and the dragon. So with that, guys, thank you so much for hanging out with me this morning. Have a great day today. Enjoy your Sabbath. Enjoy your family. Enjoy your friends. Have a great meal today. Guys, God bless. And as always, shalom.